Hello, beautiful people. Good afternoon. I am here again, and we are still riding on this whole winter crypto giddon winter thing. But I mean, there is always, iterations. There are things being put in place. Experts are saying this and that every other day. But we know that there are for everything, right? There's a time and a season. There's time for bloom. There's a time for gloom, and I think investors are more gloomy than usual. Yeah, and in the wake of it all, Bitcoin has been crashing. Ethereum has been crashing, and I mean there is a topic that I would want to cover, right? Because we've had even people without crypto wallets who have never had crypto wallets in their lives, coming to, add or pour fuel to fire just to, continue to say that crypto is crashing, it's a bubble and all of that. With everything comes science, right? And logic. And today we'll be talking about Bitcoin and its halving process. It's called Bitcoin halving. Bitcoin half. When something is half, then halving, right? What is Bitcoin halving? I think it makes sense to start with that. One of the most pivotal events on Bitcoin's blockchain is halving. It induces inflation in the cryptocurrency's price by reducing the number of Bitcoin in circulation and increasing demand for Bitcoin. Bitcoin halving has implications for all stakeholders within the Bitcoin ecosystem. What has an advantage would always have a disadvantage. There's always a cause of law and effect, and we're going to get, to all of that. But stay with me. Bitcoin's underlying technology, blockchain, basically consists of a collection of computers or nodes that run Bitcoin software and contains a partial or complete history of transactions occurring on its network. Each full node or a node contains the entire history of a transaction on Bitcoin. It's responsible for approving or rejecting a transaction in the Bitcoin's network. To do that, the node conducts a series of checks to ensure that the transaction is valid. This includes ensuring that the transaction contains the valid parameters such as nonces and does not exceed the required length. So what is halving really? In crypto terms, the term halving refers to the reduction of the block rewards given to miners. This process is especially important for digital currencies like Bitcoin, as their ecosystem are based on the proof of work consensus mechanism. I've often said this. Halving ensures that the cryptocurrency will issue new coin or new coins at a steady rate until the halving or until the maximum supply is finally reached. Take Bitcoin for example. New coins are issued as part of a block reward process. Every time a Bitcoin miner discovers a block, they receive new coins as compensation. So when Bitcoin first launched, the reward stood at 50 BTC per block. BTC means Bitcoin, right? According to Bitcoin's rules, this reward is cut by 50% every 4 years. Now, stay with me. I'm trying to explain, what Bitcoin halving is really, and why you should pay attention to it. Why it's important, especially now that it appears like we are facing a market downtime. In 2009, the reward for each block in the chain mined was 50 bitcoins. After the first halving, it was 25, and then 12.5, and then it became 6.25 bitcoin per block. As at the last, halving, which happened on the 11th, I think May 11th, 2020, 2020, I think 2020. Yes, May 11th, 2020, correction. To put this in another context, imagine if the amount of gold mined out of earth was cut in half every 4 years. If gold's value is based on its scarcity, then a halving of gold output every 4 years would theoretically drive its price higher. Follow me, please. So let's talk about verifiable scarcity, right? Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, decided that only 21 million Bitcoins would ever be mined, or, I mean, would ever exist. And when the last Bitcoin is released, 21 million coins will circulate in the market, and this number would never increase. This is verifiable scarcity. And I mean, it's essentially, or verifiable scarcity is essential to Bitcoin's value proposition. This kind of contrasts with fiat currencies, where government and central banks can print more money at their discretion, often leading to inflation. Usually, it is when you have, when the government goes on the printing spree, and you tend to have inflation rising. Now, let's talk about halving events. As there will only be 21 million bitcoins, there will only ever be 32 halving events. Please note that. There will always ever be 32 halving events. Once the 32nd halving event is complete, Bitcoin's maximum supply of 21 million coins would have been reached. This will probably occur around the year 2140, that's 2140. At the next halving in 2024, the number of Bitcoin released per block will drop to around 3.125. Now, when will the next, halving after 2024 be, and what will it come to? Well, would put that in a quiz somewhere. According to Coin Market Cap, the countdown as of the time of this video to the next halving event stands at 750 days. That's some 2 years and so. Now, we've discussed halving. Let's talk about halving and how it affects pricing. After every halving, it is likely that the value of mine coins will rise, decrease supply, increase demand. Understanding the concept of halving is useful for crypto traders, as there's typically a positive correlation between the halving event and pricing, especially with Bitcoin. The halving process is an important part of the Bitcoin's ecosystem, and as it codes its open source, anyone can see it. So, what then happens when Bitcoin halves or after a halving event? Now, to reiterate, the term halving, as it relates to Bitcoin, has to do with how many Bitcoin tokens are found in a newly created block. Back in 2009, when Bitcoin launched, every block contained 50 Bitcoins, but this amount was set to be reduced by 50% roughly every 4 years. Please, roughly every 4 years. Today, there have been three halving events, and a block now contains about 3.25 Bitcoin. Please pay attention, because this will be coming up in our quizzes. When the next Bitcoin halving occurs, a block will only contain 31.125 Bitcoin. Let's talk about causes, the law of cause and effects in halving. Like I always say, with everything that has an advantage, has a disadvantage. Now, the theory of halving and the chain reaction that is set off works something like this. The reward is half the inflation, lower available supply, higher demand, higher price, minus incentives to remains regardless of the smaller rewards, as the value of Bitcoin is increased in the process. Do you begin to get the picture? In the event that the halving does not increase demand and price, then miners would have no incentive. The reward for completing transactions would be smaller, and the value of Bitcoin would not be high enough. But think about it logically. What are the possibilities? To prevent this, Bitcoin has a process to change the difficulty it takes to get mining rewards, or in other words, the difficulty of mining a transaction. In the event that the reward has been halved and the value of Bitcoin has not increased, the difficulty of mining would be reduced to keep miners incentivized. This means that the quantity of Bitcoins released as a reward is still smaller, but the difficulty of processing the transaction is, you know, reduced. This process has proved successful twice. Yes, twice. So far, result of this halving has been a ballooning in pricing, followed by a large drop. The crashes that have followed these gains, however, still maintained prices higher than before the halving event. For example, as mentioned, in 2000, in the, 2017 to 2018, we saw a bubble. The value of Bitcoin rose to around 20k USD, only to fall to around 3,200 US dollars. Ridiculous, right? This is a massive, it was a massive drop, but a Bitcoin's price before the halving was around $650. This is what I mean. Although this system has worked so far, the halving is typically surrounded by immense speculation, hype, and then volatility. And how the market will react to the event in the future, in the future, is still, somewhat unpredictable. The third halving occurred not only during a global recession, but also in an environment of heightened regulatory speculation, increased institutional interest in digital assets, and celebrity hype. Given these additional factors, where Bitcoin's price will ultimately settle in the aftermath remains unclear. Right now, a few takeaways from this video, because we like to keep it short and simple, would be: number one, the process of halving, the rewards of mining Bitcoin after each set of 210 blocks is mined. That's what halving is about. A Bitcoin halving event is when the reward of mining Bitcoin transaction is cut in half, that's by 50%. This event also cuts in half Bitcoin's inflation rate and the rate at which new Bitcoins enter circulation, which, very much contradicts the fiat model. Previous halving have correlated with intense boom and bust cycles that have ended with higher pricing than prior to the event. Bitcoin last halved on the 11th of May 2020 at around 3 p.m. EST, resulting in a block reward of 6.25 BTC. Right? Economics are increasingly returning to or turning to new technologies that help track indicators such as growth and inflation in real time to sharpen their forecast and better, you know, offer better inputs for policymakers. Now, casting or forecasting of the present is especially promising for developing economies such as Nigeria and Africa at large, where statistical authorities may not release indicators frequently. Um, I always want to leave you with a fun fact, and this is not in any way related to Bitcoin halving, but riding on the back of the last video from I think the last video from last week, and these are just fun facts, right? There was a tweet from Binance official account saying that Terra Network airdrop will be distributed on Binance. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? The new Terra 2.0 token Luna will be distributed to eligible users based on the project distribution plan. The distribution ratio per account will be announced separately, as tweeted by the Binance official account. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I do not take your viewing and subscription for granted. Once again, many thanks for watching. See you next week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the video. Until I see you again next time, please plan for 2024. Thank you.